would you want to walk us through, your section and any changes that have been made since we've had last time? We'll
Yeah,
go from
I was thinking too, it might be helpful to remind the team kind of the process that you and Ainsley went through as we got to this point. Would that be helpful?
okay.
Or I can just walk through my section. I think there's so many pieces here that there was some parts that were in our section that was, I'm not saying redundant, but it's in some other place too.
Okay.
So
Yeah. Okay. Well, what we've been trying to do, just for the process, is take all the issues that each one of the three stakeholder groups put together and go through and present them to everybody in the whole stakeholders group. Anybody who wants to participate from the commission, and edit it, clarify, whatever. And for the interim report. Now, the interim report is a little briefer than all your issues. We've
right.
tried to summarize them, because if we put all three groups' total issues and explanations in, the report would be, who knows, 30 pages long. We want to keep it shorter. So we're going to edit these today, go over it, make sure people agree, or there's always a lot of stuff we're missing. Even when you summarize, you don't grab all necessarily the salient points. We want to make sure we do. And then when we turn in, when this will be given to the commission next week, of a commission meeting after we get through going through today and career tech. We've already done the adult basic ed, GED, special ed section, and then we're going to put it all in the interim report and show it to the commission next week. We'll also have the full attachments put together, all the full detail of all together. We'll put that in an attachment, which will go along with the interim report when we turn it in. So if somebody wants more explanation on these issues, they can go look at an attachment. The commission will have to approve the interim report that we turn in June to the governor, to the speaker, and the president, the legislature. So does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you for that overview, and good morning again to everybody, those that you just joined us. We appreciate your coming this morning.
Can I do one quick thing? I'm not sure. There's a few people I know that Riley Downey's on here for Delegate Pasteur, and I see Richard Gibson, a name, and is there anybody else that would introduce themselves, just for everybody's benefit? Richard?
Hi, I'm Richard Gibson. Welcome to be here. I actually work for the state of Maryland Insurance Administration. I'm the chief of fraud investigations. Prior to that, I was at the Department of Public Safety Correctional Services. Prior to that, I was a deputy police chief. I was in Baltimore for 25 years as a police commander. Graduate of Johns Hopkins. I have a master's in management, and I also am an adjunct professor, and I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, and you are on the commission. Everybody should know that, because you've been on recently, and I just want to make sure everybody knows. And welcome once again. Thank you for your participation. This is terrific.
Yes, thank you for doing, because I couldn't see Richard. So anybody else that is new or is representing someone today? Steve or Ainsley, do you see anybody not seeing?
Maybe Riley can introduce again.
Yeah, hi, my name is Riley Donahue, and I'm the Chief of Staff for Delegate Cheryl Pester. I'm a master's student at the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and a former Division I women's basketball player.
Well, I'll never try to play basketball against you, even in my best day.
Okay, is there anyone else? All right, again, thank you for coming here. We have an opportunity, just to Steve's point, what each committee chair was asked to do was to sort of summarize. So the summary that I did for our subgroup was probably 2 pages, maybe 3, which I knew was too long, but I wanted to be inclusive. So they went back and using the format that they have to use for the reports to the governor, came up with the sections that you see here today. So what Ainsley has popped up is, can you move it up a little bit, or because the whole section is career technology and workforce development. So we're in the, thank you. We're in the right section. And I don't know, having looked at this yesterday, pretty much they summarize all the pieces that we had put in through several of our last work groups into kind of a summary paragraph. I'm not going to read this for you. Hopefully you've already had a chance to do that yourself. But it's like in this first section, with the overview statement that transition program completion is low, and with an explanation of some of the reasons why the work group thinks so. Is there anything there that you think is missing, or that we should highlight in a different way? Or does this sort of suffice what we've been talking about for the last several months?
Okay, let's do one at a time. So we'll do the first section, like called transitional program completion is low. And so go.
Right, that's what we were just in. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. I just want to make sure everybody knows we're going to do each one of them one at a time.
You can see some of it was just the not every institution, for whatever reason, had those reentry programs or the transitional programs operational. And somewhere in other sections, they talked about lack of officers, vacancies of officers, which impacted programs application. And again, anything else in that section that you'd like to highlight, or that you think needs to be in a different way clarified?
Okay, if people
Cool.
can always come back to it if they think of something. If you just move us on, and that'll be fine.
Right. And then here, this is again, the staffing thing is of educational instructors that are working on transition programs. And that's a fact. But they also added, I guess what John mentioned last time, that there are a number of pins in process. Has that changed, John, or is that still in process?
I'll let Dr. Rubin.
Okay.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Doesn't just happen to me.
Finally caught me. So that has changed. I see 9 there. We really only had 5 transitional instructors serving over the last few years. So that should be 5. And we'll have 11 at full hiring with the new positions that we received in the governor's budget.
What's their approximate start date? Do you know?
Definitely July 1 for FY 26.
Great. That's good progress. I don't remember what we had in the past, but I think we're maybe 12 or 15. But I realized getting from 5 to 11 is a big jump. Thank you.
Yeah, and Diane, I actually had that same thought that you just mentioned. In the past, it feels like it used to be 11 or 12, not 25. Yeah. Did we get that from information that we shared that we used to be 25?
No, that was before the transition to DOL.
So the number that I got, the 25, was actually from the CEC reports that I can bring up, and I'll make sure that it's correct. Obviously before we put that in there. So let me do some digging around on my computer, and then I'll see if I can bring that up.
That's all right. And one last thing to mention as well is that the transitional certificates are certainly a stepping stone between the folks that are going to be, very soon to be released. It's something that we would consider essential. Did we used to give 3,000 certificates back when we were releasing 10,000 people per year? And now we're only releasing 3,500 people per year. So 3,000 out of 10,000 versus now 3,500 with 660. Just wondering if that plays a part, or if that is a thing that should be considered as far as the percentage of folks that are leaving that get that certificate versus just the raw number, because just DOC is housing like less than half of what it used to be 20 years ago. Again, I'm not sure what the data shows.
Yeah, not sure. And again, one of the things that makes it complicated, I don't know how some of the reports are lumped together, but we sort of were triaging people and funding together. So we had some neglected and delinquent youth money that went into a couple transition people. We had MSDE funds, PINs. We had some community college grants. So it was, there were funding stream. They were all called the same thing and their functions were the same. but it was apples and oranges in terms of funders, to be honest. But
There you
and I
go.
know that's not always easy to sustain, obviously.
Fair enough.
Can
Yep.
you, Diana, is that stuff in the larger explanation that'll be in the attachment?
No, it's not.
So maybe you might want to look at that too, if you could in the next day or so, and if you add any stuff that you can find in, because there's a whole bunch of other stuff. The population jumped up, in the mid 90s, and then for another 10, 15 years came back down. So the population now is about what it was probably in the early to mid 90s, and then everything went up high. So all those factors come in, and it's good to have that as kind of the whole concept of what's going on, so people don't see we're not just picking a little piece and
Yeah.
looking at the bigger picture.
Well, and to that point, as we're moving into the data collection and sharing part, I think we've all of us, I'm sure all the work groups have talked about this continually, that the data, access to data, people have been very generous when they have it, but just like the example we just went over, I wouldn't know where to find that data anymore. So Ainsley, you and I'll have to talk. I'm not sure, we can talk about the qualitative part of that, but I don't know if we have any numbers to back that up. So, what is this?
Quickly, I wanted to show you guys where I got the numbers for the transitional instructors. This was from the CEC report in 2014. It says that there were 22 instructors with 3,000 participants successfully completing courses. So that's where I got the numbers for the 22 and the 3,000. If that's not comparable to the data that was reported in 2024, I'm more than willing, let's.
I think it's
change
good
that.
context to put that in. It's the CDC report, 22 and 3,100 and something or another. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Ainsley.
Of course.
That was before my time, so I'm thinking to myself, boy, that was in the golden age of.
Yeah, and note that the report was called ECCC TWI then, and thank God somebody changed it to CEC. We get more letters every year we turned around.
Yeah. Right. Well, I'm glad you found that. Well, that was one of the reports that was missing for a while.
No, that one is available in the Dropbox. We have back to 2011 those EWTCC, CI, and CEC reports. So.
Yeah. No, I knew that some got lost in the transition. Yeah.
And look, I'm curious now what the other numbers were, like how many transitional teachers were there, how many educational teachers were there, how many occupational teachers were there. I'd like to see that report. That's eye-opening.
In the Dropbox, I do have a sheet that I believe, if not, then I can share that right now, that has the summaries from all of the ESUB, like all of the reports that we have access to so far. So if that's not in the Dropbox already, I will for sure put that in there so everybody has access to it.
This page is awesome, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've been collecting this data. Angel's been doing a terrific job summarizing, taking things out, and making nice charts. But we dug and dug and dug for all the E-double-tree, whatever they call it, reports, CEC reports, the old reports from Maryland Department of Education. There is a hiatus that's missing from 1997 to 2007. I think we just don't have the MSDE reports. They disappeared. There was a hardbound copy in the Maryland Law Library, and nobody can find it. The earlier ones are there, but we were able to get some of that data from other state reports. Completions of program, GEDs, things like that. So we've been digging and getting stuff we're as much as possible. I even called them around old retired folks like me who worked as principals and things. Said, "Do you guys save any reports?" Unfortunately, most people just tossed it when they left.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's go back to the data collection and sharing section, please.
Sorry, one quick clarifying question. I'm so sorry.
No.
Rochelle, you said that the transition instructors are going to be hired as of July 1st, 2025 or 2026?
26.
I'm sorry. You're right, Ainsley. I said 26. I was thinking the new fiscal year, the new FY26 fiscal year begins July 1st, but it
Gotcha.
will be
Okay.
July 1st, 2025.
Okay, gotcha. Just wanted to
Okay.
make sure. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
That's even better news.
Yeah.
Okay. I think the biggest point here is the fact that in many cases, a lot of this post-release data was not available, or it was not consistent, or it was not collected or easily accessible. I mean, that's the point. And so we're trying to find ways that we can track returning citizens in a positive way, particularly for their employment outcomes and economic independence and all that sort of stuff. So is there any other comments you want to make about that section, or any other notes to add? And I see Ainsley's note about the data, the study that's being conducted now. When will that be done? Any idea, or any preliminary data available from that?
So that data was shared with us during the one of our work group meetings.
That was that
the
report.
presentation
Okay.
that we saw. Yes.
Yeah.
And then GoCap is currently working to hopefully get a data sharing agreement with them so we can receive that data more frequently. So this group can be updated more frequently with that data. But that's still in the process, still in the very early stages. So I didn't put that down here, but we are working on it.
Do you think it would help to clarify that so people, the governor's office is reading this, will kind of know where we are with that?
I'd like to maybe wait until we have something a little bit more concrete,
Okay.
and to put that down.
Okay.
Like I'm fine with this group knowing that that's something we're pursuing right now, but I don't want to put something out there if we can't get something in place.
Understood. Understood.
One more comment here, if I could. We Ainsley went and found the legislation that put everything over at DOL in 2008, and so we have a copy. It's a very long piece of legislation. You can imagine moving departments and agencies and funding, and the purpose of going to labor was to create more jobs. I mean, that was what Tom Perez, Secretary of Labor, then said, and he testified to that effect, and so the legislature and the governor's office thought that was a good idea. So and so, you know, but then we found out that because of for example, the Secretary of Public Safety said you can't you can't publish private information about people getting jobs, and so we have not had any real data. You know, I was hoping we'd have gross data, at least how many jobs and all that, without people's names, but for some reason we just never had much data, and now we're trying to do that. So we're building something that probably should have been built in the past in some way or another, and that's this is a good reason to bring this up, because what's the point of if you know, if you can't say what your outcomes are, you know, and that's just a key outcome.
I think the other thing that came through in a couple of the conversations that I know that P&P is under DPSCS, but some of the partners that have access to both returning citizens and probably their employment information, I don't know if we should be more explicit about that or just assume that people know that P&P is under there.
You mean parole and probation?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, acronyms. Not everybody knows the acronyms. So yeah.
Well, but again, parole and probation. Do you think? Because that was again one of the big gaps.
Right.
Biggest gaps.
And we're going to put that in the report that we're going to be interviewing and talking with parole and probation after the interim report. That's one of the future activities to see what we can do there.
Okay, thank you for adding that. Makes me feel better. I think several others of the work group were adamant about that need as well. Okay, any other comments or suggestions in the data collection and sharing section for the good of the cause today?
We may, as a result of later today, have some additional data. We're having a demonstration today of the database at 2:30 for anybody who's interested in watching that. It's going to go from 2:30 to 4. So we may come back on this section and wherever data is referred to in maybe the ABGD section or even the higher ed. I don't know yet.
He's just going over how they collect the data, or is he actually going to show data that's relevant to this too? Do you know?
Well, we've asked for a PowerPoint on the data system, on the screen, screens, and how what people collect at the institutional level and central office level and all that.
Okay. I'll be there for a little while, and then I've got another thing I have to do. So, but if there's something else, I'll touch base with you or Ainsley if there's anything else we need to add to this section.
Terrific. Thank you for your anytime you can spare.
Okay. All right. Now we're looking at matching programming opportunities with post-release employment requirements, and that's the section, of course, came from the concern that were the occupational and certification options that we're providing, whether there's an up to capacity or not, were they sort of the best ones to be offering? Were they the most cost effective? Were they the ones that lead to employment in the community and sustained employment and all that sort of stuff? And were there significant credentialing options that we might be offering something behind the fence, but yet in the community it was not something that a person would be able to legitimately have competitive employment in? So that was the premise kind of this section. And then you'll notice that there's a statement about additional costs that if they don't finish the certification while they're behind the fence, or if they're in an apprenticeship program, what are the resources to get that continuum finished? So in fact, we can count them as a completer and then hopefully in the workforce. And that's you can see the licensure statement in there as well.
We use the barbering one as an example, and I don't know, there's probably other examples too from other trades, I would wonder, but this highlights this in specific ways, the problems that are on the ground, the reality. So.
And some of that would also apply to some of the those that are in the auto career pathways, some of them are in construction, electricity, and it depends on what credentials they're able to get behind the fence. Most of the constructions one now, from what I understand, there's very few restrictions on getting their certifications and their licensure, which is a good thing. It's usually case by case, is my understanding now.
Would it be good that in the here or in the addendum that explaining this particular section, to say something like that in a couple of sentences, like we think there are problems with the auto trade licensures, but not so much not so much with the construction trades.
I haven't seen any data that says it's a problem in auto either. Those particular industries are pretty open.
Okay,
yeah.
So they don't have to buy tools.
Generally not.
Okay, well, that would be good to put in there, just in a sentence or two, that we're not having, this doesn't apply to all trades. For example, auto trades, whatever, auto mechanics, whatever the right term is, in construction trades, the tools and things are not, whatever, are not a problem.
Well, I don't know, because I know
we're in that
federal bonding program. Are you getting the tools from the federal bonding program?
No, the federal bonding program does not cover tools. 99% of all auto mechanic shops do require that the mechanic buy their own tools, replace their own tools, maintain their own tools. Typically, tool sets start from anywhere like 15 grand for the basic tool set, go all the way up to 100 grand, depending on what shop they're working on and the types of cars they're working on. It's a major barrier, just so you know. And as far as the construction trades go, the majority, like again, 90% of the construction trades, at least in commercial construction, require apprenticeship and being a journeyman, which is a thing that can't happen behind the fence currently. It can only happen on the outside after they come out. So I think that statement actually is true the way it sits. I don't disagree with any of it.
Okay.
Well, this is really interesting and certainly informative, that we, because you think somebody's got their certificate, they go to the local Toyota dealer and start working, but no,
not at all. Not at all. And it's a piece. Don't get me wrong. It's a very important piece. But when you're coming out and you got to buy tools, Toyota does not provide the tools.
In some of the other areas, in some of the other states, I can't speak to Maryland because I don't work with the reentry stuff in Maryland right now, but some of the other federal grantees I've been working with recently, let's just use the Toyota example. They would hire one of the graduates based on their certification, and they would start at a more entry level. They would unfortunately be the helper. They would be this to that, the cleanup people.
Yep.
But the problem with
So
that
we
is,
call them a lube
money.
technician. That's usually
It's-
like the entry level thing, doing
Yeah.
oil changes or whatever, but that's not a sustainable career, really.
right. But it's just the challenge is it's a start, but yet at what point,
Yep.
can we sustain it?
And I will say most dealerships, they'll bring somebody in at an entry level. They'll start out as a lube technician with no tools, pay them $15 an hour while they get their certification. So we're on the other side where we're actually helping them get those certifications. They should start at a higher place. They can start at a higher place, but it does require that initial barrier of the tool set. So that's a common barrier in that industry.
Okay, anything else you want to add for clarification, or either something that you think is critical for the explanation of this particular need area?
This might be more for John, but I do think that this particular area is a good match to the MLDS findings for the labor market outcomes, so that we know that we could include that automotive, carpentry, tech seem to be the highest performing certifications. I don't know if you felt like that was appropriate, but I think it kind of matches.
I agree. Yep. We do have data that backs up that those are still strong performers, even with those barriers that are in place. So I agree with you on that. And I'm sorry, Ramika, we keep going before you have a chance.
Oh, no. I'm new to this group. I'm still on the prison reform committee group. But due to my recent promotion, this aligns perfectly with what I'm currently doing. And so forgive me if we've already talked about this. I see it's a live, living, working doc. But I just want to add a piece, and I'm not quite sure if it is appropriate at this time. And if it's not, someone stop me and say we can revisit this conversation. But I want to talk about barriers. So in terms of post-release, career-wise opportunities, recently GPEP held 2 positions they had a call out for. One was
GPEP. Just so
I'm sorry, Goucher Prison Education Partnership.
Gotcha.
We posted 2 jobs. I sent them out to our alumni network, our former students. One for a volunteer manager and one for a site director. Extremely encourage formerly incarcerated people to apply. Welcome and open to hiring former students into these roles as we see them as the start of careers. A barrier that unfortunately we weren't able to hire any of the formerly incarcerated people in Maryland. We were able to interview folks that were not in Maryland, but specifically those that had served time at MCIW and J. We could not hire them because there are some, it's for DPSCS, they consider security measures. For us, they're considered barriers. And there's a set of rules with DPSCS, like a person can't be on parole and probation. A person must be 5 years away from release before they could gain entry back into the facility. So there's a list of things set there. And it was so disheartening because we have former students that applied. One person we wanted to consider had just been released, but he had 2 degrees before he even had interacted or had his experience as a GPEP student. Students qualify for these positions. These positions are available. Is there talk of some sort of modification to bridge that gap so that these positions are accessible and that people can fulfill these roles that they are well qualified for when that opportunity comes? Because that is something that, and as part of the hire committee during that time, it broke my heart. It was just like, It's hard to do the work. And
Ramika,
John, I see you
Rebecca,
have your
can
hand
I,
raised.
Ramika,
John, go ahead, please. John
sorry.
Griffin, please go ahead, please.
can I interject something here a second? Ramika,
Yeah.
would you please introduce yourself since you're relatively new?
I do apologize. Yes. My name is Ramika Robinson. Formerly incarcerated. I served 14 and a half years in the Maryland State Correctional Facility for Women. During my time there, I was a part of in 2012, a part of an initial cohort of 15 women with GPEP, which is Goucher Prison Education Partnership. Post-release, joined the main campus to continue my education. Just received my degree on Friday. I have been promoted throughout the years. My most recent promotion was the Director of Continuing Education and Professional Advancement for GPAP. And this is my life's work. This is my why. This is my calling. I will die doing this work. And I'm truly committed to advancing not just higher education, but access across the board. And that's just a little bit about me and my journey and where I am. So,
Well,
thank
you and people like John Griffin and others who may be on the call here are the reason we do this work. So you make us feel like we're doing something pretty worthwhile. Thank you.
And I thank you.
And John, I know you had your hand up. I didn't know if you had a question or a comment or wanted to add to Ramika's comments.
Well, I would like to add to Ramika's comments because what she's saying is very true. And I represent direct lived experience with what she is describing. I've applied to several state jobs who, in one function or another, would have worked with DPSES. And I've been told specifically, I was denied for all of them. And I was told specifically by a couple of them that the reason is because I'm still on active parole and probation. This is an HR policy of theirs. Most of the hiring directors or hiring managers of the various agencies or departments that were interviewing me did not know that until they actually had to go say, hey, we want to hire this guy. And they were told, nope, you can't. That is a significant barrier for employment to not only myself, but to anybody coming out of the prison system who would like to work for the state. DPSCS definitely has this as an HR policy. They call it a security thing, but it's an HR policy nonetheless. And if any other agency, private or state, is working with DPSCS as a contractor or as a vendor, they are beholden to the same policy. So a lot of guys coming out of prison who are hoping to become peer recovery specialists and they want to work for the state, probably not going to happen because we're going to get hit by this policy. So jumping slightly ahead, the next section of the report is about barriers to employment. I was going to raise my hand to say the first statement there, we should probably include a section about that. It says that, some state agency HR departments may disqualify applicants based on their criminal record or criminal history. But I think we should add to that to include the fact that people who are on active parole and probation will be excluded. That's a significant barrier. And it's really something that could be easily remedied if the HR departments just simply change their policy. Security aside, I understand the security implications, but a lot of these security concerns I don't think are well placed. I think they're kind of misplaced because there are many positions where that kind of security concerns is not going to be valid.
Yep.
So why should we have this, why should this policy be in place? It's a significant barrier.
And just to tie it all up together, so there's the barrier in terms of when a person that is released seeking employment with DPSCS. There's also a barrier there when a person is seeking employment with higher ed college institutions in which they've studied with, and these positions are crafted for them, right, in so many ways. And now we've fulfilled those positions with two non-formally incarcerated people, still well qualified for the position, but That's not where the need is. And where I wanted to tie it in is, I know that there specifically in Maryland is an issue with DPSCS employment opportunities and filling roles. I was a part of what Secretary Scruggs held, I think it was maybe a year ago, maybe more than a year ago, here, not far from here at the building with Out for Justice. They held a huge job fair and the lines were wrapped around the corner, right? The lines were so long, they had to extend the time that they had allowed it for the job fair event. So that is proof that people want to work. But most of those folks were excluded because they've either had criminal backgrounds or for other minor issues, they didn't fit that. So if we can figure out a way to break down the barrier, maybe modify some things from the HR perspective, then we could solve both problems. DPSCS could solve a problem in terms of retention and hiring folks, right? And then the community, we can solve the problem for formerly incarcerated people in the community that are seeking employment. So it's just about in my opinion, just finding a way to bridge that gap so it works for the both in both
Right.
interests.
Great, Mika and John, thank you for highlighting a
Diana,
very real example. Yeah,
as,
and I
as,
see.
as part of this process, we are going to come up with recommendations. An interim report is identifying primarily issues, but we have several things ready to come up that have implications for law that we're probably going to get behind as a commission. I'm sure there's a lot of sentiment for certain things, but this area here is particularly difficult. And if it's an HR thing, we should be able to get the legislature to recommend to the government, if this report goes and we're going to have hearings on it, and I think we will, because Delegate Ampry will want to bring forward the recommendations. And there's a lot of power in the legislature saying to DPSCS or any other agency, you've got a policy here that we feel is so let's not go to the route of making a law. Let's straighten this out. And we could, call for hearings, could call, all kinds of things. So I would like you and John, Ramika and John, and I think Richard is particularly suited on the commission to help with this one, having been through all the areas of law enforcement and cognizant probably of a lot of restrictions for employment, to come up and craft a recommendation, that we bring forward in the report that follows the interim report. This is an area we should not let drop. We should bring it to the ombudsperson as well.
It's an easier fix than you can imagine. So when I was at the Department of Public Safety, there's mandated personnel and there's non-mandated. The mandated ones are going to be the ones in the correctional system itself as correctional officers. They're going to be the ones that have command and control over somebody else. This is what defines and differentiates the different level of background checks they have. According to COMAR, in order to be an employee in a mandated position, you have to be off parole and probation. So the easiest solution would be for this is to have COMAR changed, right? That's the easiest solution. And that can be done because whenever we would do the application for certification for both mandated personnel, those are the COs, non-mandated, somebody just mentioned something about like a peer recovery specialist.
Mm-hmm.
You just simply have to be off of parole and probation to be one. And we understood when we were doing the backgrounds that they're going to have history because that's why they're in that position, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they're applying for that position. And we understood that we never let that hold us back unless there's something in their background that precluded them from going forward, i.e. bad references, they just got into trouble or something like that previously, but we made it a point to push them through. However, once we get done with the background check at our level, it goes to the Maryland Police Training Commission, who ultimately approves everybody for work there. So they're the ultimate authority on who gets hired.
This is terrific information, John, Richard and John and Ramika. I would ask the three of you to start working together, probably set up some meetings and come up and craft, looking at, at recommendations, really define this issue even better maybe. And I mean, what, this is an opportune time with this commission to bring this up and bring it forward. So I will come back to this with you, and you can go informally and start getting together. I'd appreciate it if you start doing that, and then just tell Diana and Ainsley and me that you're going to have these meetings, or if you want us to join you or whatever, and we will do that. Okay. So.
And I think that the stories like what Ramika told, because if you look at the cost benefit of a lot of these people were significantly invested in, and then our own policies wasted our money, and it impacted the service delivery for returning citizens. Like, that's just not very smart. So those real examples, I think, would make it more real to people. So I don't know if Richard, you may have some like that as well. And John, probably you may, well, your personal experience lately. I mean, if you want to share that. So I think, John, I see your hand is up. John Fester.
Yep, just a couple of quick points. Not to beat this thing to death, but I think that first sentence is incorrect. I think it's many employers are unwilling to hire returning citizens, even though they have, or you might even say, even though they know that they have the skills that many returning citizens have because of outdated policy and procedure. I don't know how you want to finish that sentence, but I think it's like the opposite of that, how we stated it. And just in the spirit of the scope of the Prison Education Delivery Reform Commission, certainly trying to fix those barriers. I like where Richard, John, and Ramika are going. I'm not sure if it's the scope of this particular commission to go out and fix that with employers. However, I think there's an opportunity for us to gather data on the skill sets that we know should lead to a job that don't as a result of this barrier. That's data we don't currently collect, and I'm not sure how we collect it. So I'm not sure if we should figure out a way to craft a message in this report that we should be collecting data on folks that apply for jobs that have a 80% higher rate if you have this degree, but returning citizens have a 30% higher rate or a 10% higher rate with this degree due to outdated hiring practices.
I think there's a lot of work being done by other people that have these kinds of data, because I've seen those reports and a lot of things I get in criminal justice associations and groups.
Yep.
You're right. I mean, our mission is we can't ultimately do anything except recommend. But I think this is so crucial. This should be one of our recommendations. And then it's up to us to push.
It's something I've been saying since literally our first meetings. I'm like, we feel our biggest problem is we give all these people these skills and people still won't hire them. So I've said that from day one. At the end of it, we know for a fact that is a thing that happens. Again, there's no data that we collect, but anecdotally, we work with these folks in the community every day. And it's not just the 3,000 that are released. We work with them for years and years. We work with 10 to 15,000 justice involved individuals every year, period, who anecdotally come back and tell us, yeah, thank you for setting us up with this interview. But again, here we are again. My background got the best of me.
I agree with you about the unwilling thing, and I don't think we should belabor this too much more because there are a couple other issues that we have to yet look at. But I personally shared before that at Heritage Toyota, I'll tell the dealer they're on Route 40 and just west of Baltimore, and I went to the vice president. We bought leased whatever cars there for 20 some years. We love the salesman. And I went to the VP who was hiring people, and I asked him how many ex-offenders, and he said, we don't hire ex-offenders. And I said, you have an agreement with Mile One, which you're part of, to hire ex-offenders. I don't care. I don't hire them. I mean, there you are right there,
And I'm concerned that the current, I don't want to get into politics, but I also worry that the current political climate or just climate will be a continued barrier, even in Maryland. So I just worry. So anyway, any other major comments you'd like to make about the revisions that Ainsley made to the barriers to employment section and the additions made particularly about the HR policies?
Yes. Do you want to say instead, I see where your cursor is where it says some, do we want that to be most? Like, do we want to put an exclamation point on the fact that the state of Maryland is not walking the walk?
I would take that jump even if we're not absolutely sure, because I think from our own personal experiences, we'd probably say most, or, and let somebody else say it's just only some. I want to make a strong statement.
Okay.
We have to see what state agencies, I'm sorry to interrupt, even check your background. Because I work at, like I said, the MIA, they don't run background checks down there. They don't. So I would be curious to see which agencies and which agencies are mandated and required to do background checks. Because other than that, agencies don't run people's backgrounds. They don't run you through Maryland Judicial Case Search. They don't have the ability to run background checks.
Wow. So maybe it is just some. Like, should Maryland state agencies be the primary application spot for those who are formally, justice involved? Because we don't. That would be news to me. And maybe in my agency, we do very often because we're so close to DPSCS. Even in our division over here with UI, everybody that works in unemployment insurance gets a background check. That's interesting. I didn't know.
So I would just be curious to see which agencies are required to do that.
Well, you know what, Richard, we could put that statement in there where we got asked that question. We found that some agencies, state agencies, HR departments may disqualify. We don't know what the status is among various state agencies, and all the more reason for you guys to get together and maybe see what else you can find out to make us an accurate and clear statement whenever we get to the final recommendation. So
it is our experience that most private companies do background checks, though. So I don't know. I don't see that that's captured in this, or if we want to capture that there. But we do know for a fact that most private companies do background checks, and that's a thing.
I'll put that in there.
Yep.
Yeah, because I used to be an executive with Allied Universal. And in order to get a guard card license in Maryland, you cannot have any like felony convictions or crimes of violence. And that's Allied Universal. That's the largest employer in the United States. You cannot get a guard card through the state police. So we also probably need to look at what is the COMAR standard for the state police in issuing, say, guard cards for somebody can even become a security guard when they come out. Just something like that. It's a bigger scope of things.
Okay. Well, we need to work on that. I think Ainsley's sort of hesitating here. I'd say most private companies and some state aid and state aid. Just say most private companies and state agencies, HR departments. Just leave it at that right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. Back to that. Okay.
Thank you all for these upgrades. We appreciate it very much. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, we have a dead stop at 11 o'clock. Diana has to drop off, and actually, we got two more meetings today, so I'd like to take a break too. But I'd like to make sure we capture everything. Diane, did we cover the other issues before this particular one? I know we jumped to barriers.
Yeah, no, I think we covered all the sections in our section.
Okay. This is crucial section. I mean, they're all crucial. Higher ed's crucial. ABG. I mean, it's a whole continuum, but I'm really impressed what I'm learning as we do this stuff. I thought I knew a lot of stuff, and we come up with more and more stuff. So,
thank you, Richard, for coming. Okay, is there anything else that we need to, or you want to go over today about the report as a whole that you didn't cover in the beginning introduction? Or you want to talk about next steps? And I think our next meeting is July 3rd, if I'm correct. Is that right? We changed for some reason. Okay. So it's July 3rd.
We have a meeting tomorrow of everybody, Ainsley, of the leadership for all these groups.
So everybody on the advisory stakeholder group is encouraged to come tomorrow to our meeting at 12 to 1, where we're going to go over the whole report. The next commission meeting is going to be June 5th. where we're going to finalize this report. And then our next career technology group is going to be June 26th. So a couple dates floating around that you can find on the website. I also quickly wanted to highlight that one of the future activities that we're going to be doing, I think we've had a lot of good conversations about reentry and employment. There is a task force on the creation of a division of returning citizens and expanded reentry services. So they're also looking at a lot of these issues. And one of the things that this commission is going to do in the future is have closer collaboration with that task force. So we can have a lot more cross communication on those reentry issues and employment issues.
Ainsley, where would that division lie? Is there any talk about what department that will live with? Is that Department of Corrections or?
So this task force I think it's staffed by the Department of Corrections. They're currently meeting, and I've met with the chair before. I just think it would be helpful if maybe we had a little bit more communication with them, because I think they're looking at a lot of similar issues that we are. So
Good.
Gotcha.
Thank you. John, that was the point you had your hand up for?
No, actually, I had one more point about the barriers piece, just in case it sounds like we got through everything that we needed to. So I just wanted to add the fact that another thing that we've run into is the fact that employers are unwilling to share specifically whether or not certain types of backgrounds are not allowed, if that makes sense, which prevents us from tailoring the offerings that we do. So I guess, and I don't know how we would capture this, but we don't know which occupations we should not do based on what employers refuse to hire folks with a background for. Unfortunately, we just have to wait until we get 3 to 5 years worth of data where folks don't get hired for those jobs, and then simply remove those programs at that point. Whereas if we knew up front that this industry doesn't hire somebody that's justice involved, we could eliminate it immediately.
You know, what we used to do, we had career fairs or we'd have focus groups with employers, and it was informal, but they would say things like, let's say in the construction industry, if somebody stole somebody's trucks or their tools, they wouldn't take them. They didn't care about murder so much or other things, but it was this, I mean, I don't mean to be smart, but
I think it's currently still like that, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of, especially if you're talking construction folks, that's what they'd say.
And that's how they all should operate. Every industry should take whatever the background is that happened and see whether or not it makes a difference in the job that they're doing.
Yeah.
Well, there is a general thing in this country. I've traveled around quite a bit up until the last 10 years around the world on criminal justice meetings, and a lot of other countries are much more forgiving about people's past, and crime, including China, and places we think are so. I mean, they try to reintegrate people back into the community. Political issues are another thing, but general crimes is a whole different bag.
Right.
And our country is so unforgiving. I mean, you can listen to the rhetoric on TV from our own president. We're going to arrest all these felons. Well, that's kind of ironic because he is one himself. But anyway, it's and what does that mean? I mean, that just creates the whole atmosphere that we're not going to hire anybody that's been in the criminal justice involved. My father never would have had a job, and he became a very, very good construction superintendent building large buildings. He was arrested for fighting when he was young, he got fights with policemen, and so people are very unforgiving in this country. The atmosphere, that's what we're fighting.
Okay. Is there any other questions? Thank you for your comment, Rapika. Any other general comments for the good of the cause, or any other questions? And Ainsley, what is July 3rd? Do I have that? Is that not a correct date?
So July 3rd, we are going to have a commission meeting on July 3rd, a whole commission, but our next commission meeting is going to be June 5th. So we
might want to bring that up to the commission, whether July 3rd is a good time. A lot of people want to be taking, and we're not in session, so I think people would probably want to look at that date. But
yeah, we also might deserve a break after this report. So
you guys are working so hard. I really appreciate all. I mean, but it has been onerous on a lot of folks, and thank you for your work and forbearance.
Well, unless there's any other comments or questions for the good of the order, anything else?
This is a work in progress. And so it's not everything that everybody agrees 100% with. We're going to keep refining it. and the best we can. And at some point we say we approve it and we go forward. So,
And I got to tell you, Stephen, I appreciate, just the fact that you guys are willing to have the conversation and work through what our comments are, what our suggestions are, your willingness to kind of massage what the message is. I got to tell you, because we are kind of driving it, we feel like we're on the hot seat and we tend to be defensive from time to time. But of course, at the end of the day, I mentioned to you, and I'll mention it often, we're certainly open to anything that we come across that is truly helpful, anything that we can change immediately. And I think we're all here for the greater good. We're all here for the same purpose. And again, I just appreciate your fact that you're so willing to work through with us and having this conversation with us directly.
well, you can't get anything done unless you get everybody to kind of work together. And we've done it in a very, very calm, objective way so far. And I think that's terrific. And once in a while, somebody's going to feel they're in a hot seat or somebody's picking on them or something, but I don't want to have that happen. Minimize all that. Our goal, my goal personally, is that we come up with, we reform what we're doing in a better model and somehow. And that we're not going after people. We're not trying to fire people. We're trying to make government work better and do the job. And we all have our hearts in the right direction. And from what I've seen, so.
And I see that in the chat box, they're asking John if he joined their work group or whatever you're calling it. So they got your email. They'll call you.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's talk.
Good.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all so much for your time again today. And thank you for your feedback as always. And Ainsley, you know where to find me if there's anything else you want me to do in the short run.
And I
assumed the wrong gentleman, so.
I'm sorry, Steve, what were you saying?
And I know where you live too. You're only a mile from me.
Yeah, right. All right. Thank you all. And we'll see you soon.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.